The first criteria on my rubric is introduction and conclusion. And for me, that means the hook has to grab the reader's interest. The introduction is engaging and informative, setting up for the rest of the story, and the conclusion is satisfying and ties all the loose ends together. So a big thing when thinking about the introduction is the hook. So with the hook, you have to have a good opening line because this is what the readers are first going to read. And a lot of the time, if you're reading a short story, you're not going to be reading for a long period of time. So the reader is going to base whether they want to read your story or not off the first few lines or just the first glance alone. So a good way to create the hook is to start with a conflict or a threat because this is most likely to draw the reader in. So to grab the reader's attention, you have to use something unusual or unexpected, create tension, and make the reader anxious to read more, to learn what happens to this character and how this character will deal with the threat or change. Nobody has the time to read 4 paragraphs worth of an intro, so instead, jump right into it. No one wants to be reading a whole first page just to get the background and the setting. They want to be put right into the action and get this story started right off the bat, give the reader what they want, a powerful opening and a great story, and then hopefully leading into a powerful conclusion. All stories, including short stories, must end with resolution. There must be some answer to the central conflict. When you write the ending, your story must be complete. All unanswered questions posed in the story must be answered. All loose ends must be tied up. So an ending can be put into 3 categories: denouncement, realization, or epiphany. So denouncement. The story can end with a closed ending or an open ending. In a closed ending, nothing more can happen. That's the end of the story. But in an open ending, the writer leaves questions about what will happen next. Realization. It is less powerful than epiphany. The central character gains some insight or enlightened, and then makes some change in his or her life. Epiphany. James Joyce introduced the technique of epiphany. It is not simply a realization, but a magical moment, felt moment that results in permanent change by the character. Short stories can have multiple kind of endings, but I'm going to focus on these 4. Twist ending. Sometimes the writer concludes the story with a twist ending. Readers are led to believe that the story will end in a particular way, and then it ends in a different way. So the ending is unexpected. Resolving action. Sometimes the story ends with some final action that brings an end to the conflict. Complete finality. End of the story ending. Sometimes a story ends after it has been told. And finally, ambiguous ending. This is essentially the writer crafts an ending in which the story ends, but the reader is left wondering what will happen next. So in this case, there is no permanent resolution to the ending. Another story can be written, which brings total closure to the story. You see this sort of ending in sequels. There's a few things every ending must do. And the first thing it has to do is tie up the loose ends and answer any unanswered questions from the story. The conclusion is just as important as the introduction. So, since this is what you're ending on, you have to have it so that it resonates in the mind of the reader. The third thing is the ending must be a logical outcome of the story. In other words, it must be based on cause and effect. 4, the ending should also answer the central conflict of the story. And the last few points I'll just smush together, which are sometimes the ending ends the story, but that doesn't mean the end. The reader is left to answer the question implied by the ending of the story. If the ending is disappointing, many writers won't recommend that others read your short story or novel. So it probably won't get around, and for the best possible outcome and most people to read it, you have to have a strong conclusion because that's what resonates with the reader the most. And then only through finding a meaning to your story will the best ending become possible. That is why theme is so important. And now some tips for the conclusion. Avoid the too neat ending. So don't wrap it up and seal it up tight. 2, look at your beginning to find your ending. Your opening will often suggest how your story should end. So 3, a good story ends loosely. It doesn't tie up all possibilities that the story presents. And the final tip, avoid the tendency to summarize. They don't want to just have you retell what happened in the story. Make it creative, give it a nice ending that people will remember. So with all these tips and tidbits, it is easy for me to now go through my rubric and look and see conclusion is satisfying and ties all the loose ends together, and now I have some ways that I can do that, as well as the introduction is engaging and informative, and setting up for the rest of the story, along with hook grabs the reader's interest. So I know that I want to start on an interesting note, and I want to have something that pulls the reader's interest, because in a short story you only have so much to write, and I really want to draw their attention in that first paragraph. So that's what I'm going to do. So I hope you enjoyed listening to my introduction and conclusion portion of the rubric.